But to really build a business that's going to last for a long period of time, that's going to thrive, that's going to be resilient, you have to have both lived experience and also an example of, and also understand why that works. Now, the examples I gave just now are like money making or things like that, but the same thing's true in health, right? If you sit down with a personal trainer and he's like, all right, I'm going to teach you how to get rock hard abs, and you look down at his dad bod, you're going to have some questions. You're going to be like, I'm not sure you're qualified. What you want is you want your teacher to be a role model for you of something that you're aspiring for in that category. If I sit down with my financial planner and I say, hey, I've got some debt I want to get rid of. Can you help me come up with a plan? I'm just like drowning in this debt over here. And the financial planner's, oh man, me too. Run, get a different financial planner, right? It doesn't matter if they got a degree in finance. If they're not actually living it out, then that's not who you need to learn from.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the How to Scale a Business podcast. My name is Hector Santiesteban and I am your host for today. Our special guest is a good friend, Mr. John Meese. He's a best-selling author and the founder of Sell Your Smarts. And we're going to talk about how to scale a coaching or consulting or really an online educational information business of any sort. So John, thanks for hanging out with us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. This is my jam. I love talking about this stuff. So happy to be here and happy to help.
I expanded a little bit because I think what you talk about is much more than just coaching. And because I have this weird aversion to like being a coach, and like I have this strange aversion to it. And so for the longest time, I would never consider myself that. But whether you're a consultant or you're selling information or courses, I mean, all education is sort of this, this umbrella that I think your expertise lends itself to. And so anyone who has some sort of that's like, advanced knowledge, expertise that can help somebody, I think you can really help. So what I'd love to get into, what I love about your stuff is it's very tactical, but I think your story and also how and why you got into it is pretty important too. So why don't you catch us up on some of the sort of key, points along the way, and then we'll talk about some of the things that you've been doing with your community and your clients today.
Yeah, sure. Happy to. So these days, I mean, everything really stems from our families. Like we made it our family team mission. Like even our kids know it. That is to steward wisdom. Like that's how we make decisions about where we're going to spend our time. To steward wisdom, and we define that as to collect, protect, and multiply knowledge plus experience. Right? That's how we define that. So to steward wisdom. So my core business, Sell Your Smarts, is just an extension of that. Of saying that the reality is the world is filled with billions of people who have spent decades acquiring wisdom in their field of expertise, whether that's helping people become healthier, wealthier, happier, to produce podcasts, to pick a random example. And whatever that is, right? So whatever those reasons are that they've spent all this time doing this, what most people do is at best they share that in one-to-one interactions with a handful of clients or team members or family members or friends. And then at some point they either are forcibly retired by death or they choose to retire, and that wisdom just kind of fades and dies with them. And the rest of us are left just, in the dark, grasping and trying to recreate the wheel from scratch. And it's just like, drives me crazy. I mean, I don't like doing the same thing like twice and have it like start over from scratch every time. I like building off of things. And there's so many people that have so much experience. So like you're listening to this, if you've got at least a decade of experience in some field of your life, right? And so my core business is focused on helping you take that and to build a business around that. So to sell your smarts without losing your soul or your Saturdays. And so that's been a lot of fun. I've done that for about 12 years now. When it started, it was just more about just like how to blog and how to make money blogging, but that world has changed a lot. So yes, over time, that's included courses and membership sites and podcasts and YouTube. And these days, a lot of my focus is around group coaching, but the core theme of online education has always been
there. There's so many things. And I don't know that I've shared this with you personally, but I really enjoy how you have enabled me to sort of go to pursue that, right? Because I've always thought that like what do I know? How good is it, what I know, if it's not like a thing, right? It's not a widget, it's not some product, it's not even, and so you've really what I think helped invite people to share that and to turn it into something for themselves. And I think what's also really interesting is we probably share the same I hate playing the same level over again. So we were of similar age, and it was back in the days when, video game consoles would, like, they would unplug, or you wouldn't get to the checkpoint, or you didn't have the memory card or whatever, and like having to start over. I remember just being like, fine, I'm going outside. I gotta play it over. I'm gonna go to the park.
Oh, you're giving me some trauma flashbacks right now. I remember we had on the Nintendo Entertainment System on the NES, we had a McDonald's game that, unless I was on the Sega Genesis, whichever that one that was on, it was a McDonald's video game, which sounds like a dumb idea, but it was actually really, really fun. And you could play as like Grimace, and you're trying to like get, I don't even remember all the character's name, but there was no saves. And so yes, we did. That was a game where, like, I remember we got really close to finish the game one time, and then somebody tripped over the cord, and it was just this traumatic experience. I'm like, we have to start over. But yeah, so like life is like that. I mean, it boggles my mind that like as a son, as a father, as an entrepreneur, as a husband, like all these different roles I play in my life, there's no like instruction manual, right? And so a lot of my focus of my own life has been trying to like find the instruction manual, or if there isn't one, to learn how to write it. And so even my books are actually usually they're like the missing manual to some part of business that I feel like someone else should have written it, but they didn't, so I wrote it. And so that's worked out pretty well.
What I think would be great for a lot of people who are listening to this podcast, and especially a lot of people that I work with, they are exactly that. They've been in an industry for decades, 10, 20 years, and all of that knowledge has just been accrued in their head. And I think a lot of them underplay that knowledge, and to your point, that wisdom. But then I think also they don't necessarily see what's next. They go, well, this is how I've been doing my job, and this is what's helped me close deals, or this has help us do what, up until this point. And they think that that's all that it is. What are they missing, or what are they not seeing about those years of experience, and especially maybe technology and the internet, maybe that sort of opened up some things. But I feel like a lot more people are coming online to the opportunity of utilizing and leveraging that, to your vocab, wisdom, for good, right? Whether that's their own personal gain, or starting a brand or business, or whatever it may be.
Yeah. So, I mean, the first thing, it all comes down to usefulness, candidly, right? So there are plenty of people that say like, okay, I have wisdom. Now I just want to like vomit it all over the internet and hope it helps somebody. And like, that's not what I'm talking about, right? Like there are people that come candidly, like that come to the conclusion like, oh, I have all this wisdom, I want to share it. And they just kind of share everything. And like, as much as there's a good like desire under the hood there to like help people, you have to do this extra work of figuring out where is what I know useful to solving a real problem. Like who are the real people that have a real problem that I have the real solution to, right? That's like the core of, that's honestly just like the core of any business, but specifically in online education business, like you have to get even more clear in that, because that's all you got. It's all you got is you're helping real people solve a real problem with some sort of real solution. So one of the things that I first recommend is usually to take a wisdom inventory, because I'll just to define wisdom a little bit further here. Um, Wisdom is both knowledge and experience. And so what a lot of people have is a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience. We're looking for those overlap. And so let me explain what this means. If you have a lot of knowledge about something, but you have not done it, you have book smarts. If you have a lot of experience about something, but you haven't studied it, you have street smarts. Wisdom is where you have both done it and studied it, right? You have both knowledge and experience. And so that is like a unique overlap, right? And so we part of this also comes for me from my college experience, where I had all these professors who were teaching me these things that they never done. And that was really frustrating, right? Because I was like, well, what about this? And they're like, well, I don't know. I've never been outside the classroom. And you're like, well, that's not useful.
Can I throw the counter example? Because I always get that. But then what might you say to someone who goes, well, what's the value if I've got all the street smarts? What's the value of the book smarts?
Yeah. I think in this case, it's your ability to understand not just that something worked, but why it worked. Because, for example, there's actually a lot of books and a lot of podcasts that are just somebody sharing their street smarts. They're like, I did this thing. I ran this. I was on TikTok in the first 6 months after it was in the US, and I went viral, and I'm massively successful. And if you buy my program, you can be like me. But when you actually start digging into it, you realize they actually don't know why they were successful. They just like happened to like land on a viral moment at the right time. And that's just not useful, right? So when we're talking about knowledge transfer, we really are talking about wisdom transfer. You have to have both, right? But on the flip side of that, there's plenty of podcasts and business books that are just an idea that somebody had, and they wrote a whole book on it, hit a whole course on a book on an idea they've never tried. Right? There's so much of this out there. You'll start to see it now where you're like, wait a minute, is that just book smarts or is that just street smarts? Where there's books and there's podcasts and there's courses on both of those categories. And what you see is like the few who are really excellent at genuinely transforming lives, which is honestly the core of the longevity of your business, right? Anybody can start a business and hit a viral moment and make a buck, in a short term. But to really build a business that's going to last for a long period of time, that's going to thrive, that's going to be resilient, you have to have both lived experience and also an example of, and also understand why that works. Now, the examples I gave just now are like money making or things like that, but the same thing's true in health, right? If you sit down with a personal trainer and he's like, all right, I'm gonna teach you how to get rock hard abs, and you look down at his dad bod, you're gonna have some questions. You're gonna be like, I'm not sure you're qualified, right? What you want is like, you want your teacher to be a role model for you, of something that you're aspiring for in that category. If I sit down with my financial planner and I say, hey, I've got some debt I want to get rid of, can you help me come up with a plan? I'm just like drowning in this debt over here. And the financial planner is like, oh man, me too. Run, get a different financial planner, right? Like, it doesn't matter if they got a degree in finance. If they're not actually living it out, then that's not who you need to learn from. So that's really the core premise of everything I do, and then we get into like what products, what price points, like sales and marketing. But I think it has to start with understanding why, or we're just throwing stuff at the wall to see what sticks.
Do you think that there's the large breakdown of people is in like the getting started phase where they miss it because they're not seeing they're not either not focusing on the right sort of audience or customer, or the subject matter is wrong? Or do you think that a lot of them, they get started and then they miss it in the details, and they miss it in the pricing and the offer and the packaging? Obviously both are important. Is there one worth focusing on more if someone is sort of thinking about this?
Yes. So I love this question. I got for a few years to be at the seat of running a membership site called Platform University, where we had over 100,000 subscribers. We had over 5,000 paying customers who were all smart professionals. Most of them were making six figures in their day job, or their core business as a therapist or an attorney, or I guess those are the two examples that came to mind. But like, or an author or a coach or a leader or an executive, or just whatever their role was. They were already clearly smart people who've spent a lot of time in their field. And we were guided through the process of how to build an online education business. This is back in 2017. And what I found was crazy to me was we were teaching them tactics that we knew worked. Um, but out of the thousands of paying customers, we had dozens of case studies of people who succeeded. And now the dozens of case studies looked nice, but I knew the math, and I was like, there's bad math here, right? The vast majority of people are coming in here and they're not succeeding. And so I started studying that, and what I discovered was that the vast majority of people who start an online education business were like, all right, I want to teach. The reason why they fail is what I call death by 1,000 ebooks. So they start out of the gate. Maybe they have a good idea, maybe they have a bad idea of what they think their topic is about, what they're going to talk about and teach online, but they start by selling the lowest price product. So they start by selling a $17 ebook or a $97 course, and that's their first product. It kind of makes sense, right? You're like, I'm new to this business model, I'm going to start with the lowest price thing. But at this point in your business, you have the smallest size audience you will ever have, and you're selling the product that requires the most amount of sales to be financially viable. And so what happens is the vast majority of people either go broke or burn out and give up before they reach a point where they're making significant income from what they're doing. And here's the other thing. If I sell you an ebook for $17 that sort of kind of maybe helps you with something in your life, you might pay $17 for it. You might not read it. You might not put it into practice, but I can get away with having a really kind of like a murky message at $17. So the flip side of that is if we come out of the gate and say, okay, step one is your goal is to get 5 clients to pay you $2,000 in a group coaching program where you're going to help them over 60 days. We have just raised the stakes. And so now you have to solve a problem that's worth solving for a premium, right? And you have to go directly to those people and talk to them, not just send emails or post things on LinkedIn, but actually talk to humans to find out where is the pain that they're feeling right now that you can help them with. And that is a shortcut to getting so clear in where your value is of how you can help people and also a shortcut to generating massive, not only impact, but also massive income. And so that's what I do now is I help people build sold out group coaching programs, because that is the bridge where it's like, if you can do that, now all of a sudden we get to the point where you're earning $10,000 per month, group coaching 90 minutes per week. Well, yeah, now you could go create books, membership sites, courses from a place of abundance, because you have clarity on where you're seeing the impact you're having in people's lives. And on top of that, beyond that, you're also on not just having an impact in their lives, but you're also making good money, and allows you to buy back your time for whatever else you've been doing. So that's really the core of my business now, but it took about a decade for me to figure that out.
Well, John, I wish I would have known you 10 years ago.
Well, 10 years ago, I didn't know what I know now. So, but I
well,
mean,
maybe that's what I needed. I needed to talk to 2025 John in 2015
yeah.
because I remember selling my $17 ebook and going, I'm gonna go broke. You're trying to do this.
Yes.
So fantastic. And what I really love about that model is that it's clear, it's attainable, and
Mm-hmm.
and I don't want to say it's easy, because by no means is it easy, but it is
No.
simple. It's like recipe, right?
Yes.
It's like baking, a bread, or making a cake. It's like, there's plenty of places to go wrong, and it's bound to, end up a Pinterest fail. And also, if you follow these guidelines, like, you're more than likely to, be successful. And I think that that's really
Exactly.
important.
Yeah. Well, and I should say, there are some people who've done it the hard way, right? There are some people who did figure out how to make it past that line where they build a business off the back of $17 ebooks, then $50 courses, then eventually like a $50 a month membership. And what I found now is also like, I also get a joy of working with those people, where now I'll get to come in and somebody's like, Sean Blanc's a good example. His business was doing $600,000 a year when we started working together, and he'd been building his business online for over a decade. And so he's making money off of memberships and courses. But I taught him this principle, and he's like, wait, are you thinking of this the hard way? I'm like, I mean, yeah, but let's just see, right? So we crafted a group coaching program, introduced it to the exact same audience. And he had 6 sold out cohorts back to back out of the gate. And so he immediately did over 6 figures that he added to the business in the first 9 months that he was running this business model. I take it back. No, I remember him saying he crossed $100,000 in the first 6 months of adding this to his business, like just $100,000 just from group coaching. And so like what's been fun now is I found that like if someone's kind of in this transition of going from, I have wisdom in my field, but now I'm trying to build this online education business, a sold out group coaching program is the way to go. But if you've already built a group coaching, or not even a group coaching business, if you build an online education business, you're already doing good money. Then if we tack on a sold out group coaching program, it has this additive effect. And so Sold Out Coach Club has become like my core program, where I spend the most of my time just helping people do that. Let's create the sales and marketing machine to scale up that program. So now I've got clients who do over 7 figures, like Dustin Riekman, who introduced us, right? I mean, he does over 7 figures from following that playbook.
One of the things that I think is probably pretty typical for people is they're going, yeah, but I do this, or I'm in this industry, or like I'm whatever. Are there examples of people who are maybe might fit that, what a lot of people might say doesn't fit this mold, and they were sort of able to make it work?
Oh, sure. I mean, let me think. At this point, I've got a couple hundred sold out coaches in my community. So we can pick a niche and kind of find somebody in that category. But one of my newest clients that's just in the process of selling out his first program right now, his was focused on helping, his name is Chris, and he's focused on helping people build healthy, how do I say this? Lead healthy families. So he's trying to help dads lead healthy families. It's one of those things where it's like, at first glance, you're like, I mean, that's a good idea, but like, I don't know if I pay off the top of your head. You're like, I don't know if I pay for a coaching program for that. But what we're looking for in any offer, we're not looking for 100% of your market to buy a premium product, right? What we're looking for is, so once you get to the point where you have an audience, or if you have an audience already, we're looking at that email list and we're saying, okay, if this is your target client, within that broad group of your target client, there's this target client bullseye, which is that inner 10% of someone who right now in their life today, they need you more than they've ever needed you before. And you could have a massive impact on their life. You could help them radically change something in their life. And then you can invite them to work with you. So I've seen people do this for fitness programs. I've seen people do this for, I have one of my clients, Monique, she's in France and she's a vocal coach. And so she developed something for people that want to, kind of upgrade their singing, who want to kind of launch their professional singing career. I've got people who train, like Melissa, one of my clients, she has a program to help busy moms and dads start their own bookkeeping business. They can quit their day job and spend more time with their kids. And so it's like she's teaching you bookkeeping, right? Like how to actually like invoice a client, how to do bookkeeping in 1 hour a week for a business owner. But she's really teaching you something bigger. She's identified that's like, yeah, I mean, Hector, you and I could take a bookkeeping class right now and it might not be that valuable to us, right? It would probably be like, something where it's like, I don't really want to do that actually. But she's found, hey, there are these families who are at this point where they're not spending as much time with their kids as they want. Both mom and dad are working full time. And if they can go through this program, they can learn how to create their own bookkeeping business where they only need a dozen clients to pay their bills, and then they can quit their day job, right? Like that's a massive transformation. Taking that skill where she's been like running a bookkeeping agency and been a bookkeeper for this point for 15 years, that's easy for her to teach. But for them, that's life changing, right? And so that's what we're looking for is like, what's that point? What's that inflection point where your skill completely transforms someone's life or their health or their career or their relationships?
Yeah, it was probably worth noting at the beginning, because, and I'm sad that I didn't, but the idea of the curse of knowledge, right? Is this idea of that we don't value what we know, and we just think that everybody knows it. But I think to your point, you really mentioned that there is somebody right now who needs it more than ever before, and for us, it's just like. To us, it's common knowledge, right, or common sense. We might even think it, and to them, it's life changing sort of information.
Exactly. So that's what we got to look for, right? And so that's why I like that. Everyone's probably heard of having a target client, right? That's not a new idea, but saying, okay, but if it is a target, right? Like if it is like a dartboard target, like there's a bullseye. Now you're going to have some people that come along that aren't the bullseye, right? They might be close. You can still serve them, but if you hyper focus on the bullseye and creating a transformational group coaching program just for those people, then you're going to become so much more magnetic to them. You're going to attract them. They're going to say, "Oh my gosh, you see me. You see exactly what I need. I can help you." And so that's kind of what we're looking for. So yeah, I've seen coaches build businesses. There's primarily three markets, right? There's health, wealth, and relationships. Those are the primarily three markets, but those are pretty broad, right? So wealth includes personal finance, but it also includes your career or your business, right? There's a lot of stuff that's in there. And with health, you could focus on physical health or mental health, and with relationships, you could focus on your friendships or your spouse or your future spouse or your kids. These are the three primary categories where people buy educational programs.
I'm curious about the paths, like, okay, so, or the evolution, and if there is, okay, so if this group coaching program is phase one, is there a phase two? Is there a phase three? Is it just bigger, more, or how do you see it progressing or evolving for these people once they've kind of got past this initial stage?
I'm so glad you asked, because after all, we're here talking about how to scale, right? And group coaching, if you're involved with it, does have some built-in skill limits. Now, the leverage is good, right, for a group coaching program, but there are some limits to how much you can scale that with your involvement in it. Um, and so yeah, so what I found, and this comes from when I was a fractional CMO, or I was working behind the scenes in online education businesses that were doing between $2 and $20 million a year in revenue. Um, Also got to peek behind the scenes of a couple online education businesses doing $100 million in revenue, but I didn't spend as much time with them. Um, but what I found was that at the core of each of these businesses that were successful at scale, there were really three core products that everything was built around. When you look at the numbers, and so there's one of them is a flagship product. Now, a flagship product is a category. A group coaching program is a type of flagship product. Sometimes a flagship product is a premium conference or an event or a retreat. For one company I worked with, it was a cruise that they did every year. But it's some sort of like it's where you invest the most, where a few super fans invest the most to work closely with you. And that was a common theme. Incidentally, a couple companies I worked with, I found out, wait a minute, you don't have a flagship product. You just have these other two, which I'll talk about in a second. And then we added a flagship product and saw a dramatic increase in their whole overall revenue. It was just like a missing piece. So ultimately, you want all three of these, but the order matters, right? So I recommend you build a flagship product first at the core of your business. I think the simplest flagship product to create is a sold out group coaching program. So that's what I teach. Now, the second product is a gateway product. Now, that's the $17 ebook. So now you get to do that. Once you've got a sold out group coaching program, now you can go to the gateway product. Gateway products, and you can have multiple of these, they're designed not to create cash, but to create customers. Once someone buys a product from you, they're 5 times more likely to buy something else. It's a great way to turn somebody from just an interested bystander into someone who's a customer in your business, and then to enroll them into your other programs. Gateway products take a lot of forms. Sometimes they're eBooks, sometimes they're courses, sometimes they're workshops, and sometimes they're cheat sheets or PDFs or training programs of any kind. The key is they're a painless price that solves a simple, painful problem. And so every single one of my books is a gateway product. Nonfiction books are typically gateway products. Then we don't always call them that, but that's what they are, right? You buy a book to learn about somebody's worldview, to solve a problem, to get to know them. And then now, when I talk to somebody who's interested in joining my group coaching program, sometimes they've read all 3 of my books, sometimes multiple times, right? And so that's just like this massive shortcut to trust, where I make a couple bucks on each book sale. That's not going to pay my mortgage. But I make enough money there that allows me to continue to do that, just to enroll people into the other stuff that I do. And so gateway products is the second category. And then the third is a subscription product. Now, a lot of times this is a membership product, like a community or a mastermind. A mastermind if it's kind of like a higher ticket, a membership if it's or a community if it's a lower ticket or lower price. You typically want one or the other, depending upon your niche. But a membership product, the recurring revenue is awesome. So a lot of times people kind of come out of the gate and they're like, I want a membership product. I want recurring revenue. Of course, we want money that's going to automatically show up. However, out of the 3 products, they're actually the most difficult to scale. And I say that having started multiple 6-figure memberships and run 7-figure memberships, where they are the most difficult product category to scale. And so you want to do them third and last. But yeah, so flagship product, and then gateway product, and then membership product.
I'm going to try and somehow send this through the portals to my younger self and say, listen to this. Because I made the mistake of, exactly that, trying to scale a continuity membership program and running into all the pitfalls that you're mentioning.
Yeah, memberships, they start upside down, right? The same way you can be upside down in a house where you owe more than it's worth. Memberships always start upside down. Day one, you owe the full experience, even if you have 1 member. And so that's why it's like you have to get to a certain level where the math makes sense, and that's hard to do on day one.
One of the other things that's been interesting, sort of being in and around the information space, is seeing the progression. And back 10 years ago when I got into it, it was, like you said, all about the eBooks. And then sort of, maybe 5 years ago, I saw a lot of the course creators creating SaaS products and software and, sort of tools and expanding. And then now AI has sort of evolved, and, even our good friend, there's Dustin AI, right? And, or there's Hermosi AI or whatever it is. And so I think maybe I'd love to just get your insights on how the evolution of the medium itself is sort of evolving, and if you think that it is changing or iterating, and how someone might be prepared for that, so that way they don't look up in 3 or 6 months and go, this is what John told me to do, but not knowing that the puck was kind of going somewhere else.
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that. And I'm also glad even when you asked me, you said, could you share your insights with me? Which is a spoiler alert for my answer to the question, by the way. So my background before I got into entrepreneurship is I used to be a super nerd. I'm still pretty nerdy, but I used to work for an economics research lab. And that's kind of like up there on the nerd totem, I think. I was a homeschool kid who went to college and worked for an economics research lab. Like, I feel like there's very few echelons that go higher than that in terms of the nerd totem. Yeah. Yeah. But so I, in 2020, I was reading economic memos when a lot of other people were distracted by other things, which I was also distracted by my own problems in 2020. But the World Economic Forum came out with an announcement that I think a lot of people have ignored that was a mistake, which is that the age of information is over. Now, Hector, our entire lives have been in the age of information, right? The age of information started in the 80s, where you had the rise of just the introduction of technology like computers and then the internet that changed how the world works. Because before the age of information, or even at the beginning of the age of information, there was something you needed or wanted to know that was sitting on a piece of paper in a locked desk drawer of some guy in Wichita, Kansas. And that's it. You were never, ever in your life going to see that piece of information that you wanted to know. And there's a lot of other information that just wasn't written down. What happened is, as computers and internet started to spread, we had this phenomenon started where people started sharing information back and forth, and information became so valuable of like you could actually change your community or change your industry or change your business based on learning a new piece of information. And that started at the early part of the age of information, but over time what happened is the volume of information started to get so overwhelming that we reached a point where we spend the majority of our time ignoring information. So right now, while we're here having this conversation, we're ignoring emails, text messages, news headlines, new Wikipedia articles, some new course somebody just came out with 5 minutes ago. We're ignoring massive amounts of information just to have this conversation. And so what happened is, I mean, it's supply and demand, right? When there's an abundance of supply, the value goes down. And so 15 years ago, or even 10 years ago, a lot of courses, a lot of online education businesses were focused on selling information. They were even called information products or information product businesses or information businesses, right? Because that's what you're doing. So you would sell a course. You're like, hey, this course has 32 videos. We've got 72-page PDF. We've got all these tips and tricks because you were selling information. You were just packaging it. Well, what happened is when the age of information ended, all of that became useless. I can ask ChatGPT to create me a 72-page PDF right now in 2 minutes. That doesn't give it any value, right? And there's probably actually a lot of good information in that PDF, but I'm not going to read it. Even before ChatGPT took off, back in 2020, I started writing about how we were shifting to the age of insight. And this is why your question is really interesting that you said, I love your insights on this. So the age of information is over. The age of insight has begun. This is like if you were running a shop in the Stone Age and you're working with like your stone chisel over here, and the guy next door opens a shop and he's got bronze tools because the Bronze Age has begun, and you're in a business immediately, right? It doesn't matter whether you like bronze tools or not. The Stone Age is over. The Bronze Age has begun. Same exact things going on here. The age of information is over. And so many people are still trying to sell information because they don't recognize that. And that's not what you're selling. What you're selling is insight. Insight is information that has been filtered through the lens of a trusted expert to give you not 100 possible or 1,000 possible answers to your question, but one answer you can trust. Now, in 2020 and 2021 and 2022, I was writing about this saying, hey, there's this massive demand for experts, massive demand, because as a globe, we've decided I don't want 100,000 answers. I want one answer I can trust. And I need somebody I can trust in every category of my life. I need someone I can trust to give for marriage advice. I need someone I can trust for parenting advice. I need someone I can trust for financial advice. All these categories. There's this massive demand. There's not enough people stepping up to the plate. What happens when you have massive demand and not enough supply? Innovation. That's why artificial insight, or AI, has taken off, is because there's such a demand for people to give me one answer I can trust, and I don't have enough people in my life that I trust in each category. But ChatGPT can give me an answer I trust decently well in every category, and so it's a placeholder until I have someone I can trust. So that's what's shifting.
Not much, not a lot.
Yeah, just the world.
Small shifts. John, I've got two questions for you. The first, two more. The first is if people want to find out more about you, any of the books, any of the things that you're involved with, where's the best place for people to go?
Yeah, so my latest book, Serve to Sell, exactly how to sell premium programs with one free coaching call. It is a critical skill for what I'm talking about, of being able to talk to humans, right? Have a real life conversation with somebody, ask them questions, deliver insight, and then ultimately enroll them into some sort of premium program, even if your program doesn't exist yet. So that book has made people money, which I love it. It's, yes, it's sold a lot of copies. It's making a little bit of money, but more importantly, a lot of people have taken that and used that to build their whole business. And I want to give it to you for free. So yes, if you want to, you can go on Amazon and buy it. But if you go to Meese, that's my last name, MEESE.gift, Meese.gift/scale, you can get a free copy of the book. So that's what I'd like to say is the best place to start. I hope you find that useful, but I'll also email you some free resources to go along with it so you can apply right away.
Amazing. We'll link that up in the show notes as always for you all. And my last question for you, John, is in your opinion, what is the secret to scaling a business?
The reason why people fail to scale is because they lose touch with the humans on the other side of the business. And I've seen it happen. I've seen hugely successful entrepreneurs forget about the humans because they start thinking about numbers to the point where they forget that 100,000 subscribers or 1 million subscribers is 1 million human beings. And then they start making business decisions without taking those humans into account, and they lose touch with them, and they suddenly wonder, why does nothing work? It's because they're out of touch. Empathy is an entrepreneur's superpower of put yourself in the position mentally. Just close your eyes and put yourself in the shoes of your target client. Think what they think, feel what they feel, and then use that to run your business. That's a superpower to scale.